It's not dire, it's different, is the important message. One of the things I've learned over the years in dealing with technology is that the most important thing when you answer a question like this is to define timescale, because timing ends up being everything. And what we can do is move through timescales. A lot of what I remember seeing when we had the internet bubble, there was a lot of predictions about things were going to happen, and then a year or two later they hadn't happened, and there was a lot of people writing articles about how it was all wrong and there was no change. But of course, as we all now know, most of those predictions have come true, and they've had stunning effects on, for example, retail and media and all sorts of other areas. What was wrong was the understanding of the timescale. And what's going on at the moment, you've got to be very careful to separate two things, cause and effect. And I'm forever reading eminent bankers or economists talking about something called, I don't know, by credit default swaps, mispriced or bad loans in Louisiana or whatever. And I think there's a real danger in misunderstanding what is a symptom and what's a cause. And I think the cause of what we're seeing in change is a fundamental one, and that is that we have two tectonic plates moving against each other. One is technology. The one thing we know, we look at Moore's law and pretty much any measure, is that the time scale of change is going up exponentially. And that's kind of obvious. Most people accept that, and they, if you're my age, you look through your lifespan and you can see that accelerating. But the thing that's not understood is that that tectonic plate of change is rubbing up against a plate that isn't changing at the same rate, and that's our basic human institutions and the time clock of humanity. And we were on this earth, it used to be for 3 score years and 10. Perhaps now I believe for my age group it's now 4 score years and 10. But that's only a small percentage change, whereas the time scale of everything else is changing on an exponential basis. And where those two plates rub together, you get earthquakes, you get big shudders, and you get earthquakes. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing actually a massive change in the volatility of our lives and our businesses. And the important thing about why that's different, not dire, is there are ups and there are downs, there are opportunities, there are threats. It's not about looking, we can look at a particular GDP number. And of course, the reality for a company is within that GDP now, you have the ability to create massive businesses in a very short amount of time, or you have the ability for massive businesses to disappear in a very short amount of time, whole industries. So this is why understanding the macro timescale is there. Why do I say cause and effect? Well, if any of you have read all those great books about the last financial crisis, you realize that the trading was getting faster. The instruments were getting more and more sophisticated. The feedback loops in the system were getting more and more complicated. And that made everything happen faster and more extreme. What was the process for fixing that? It involved things like Timothy Geithner getting in a cab, crossing Manhattan, standing with the heads of the investment banks in a room, looking them in the eye and telling them, the president is telling you to do this, just do it. And any of you that are in business know that that's a conversation you can't have over a phone. You have to stand in front of the guy and do it. Now, the interesting thing is that all of those things are changing in their time scale. They continue to get faster. Still takes you the same amount of time to get across Manhattan in a cab. And we can keep looking at these examples. That's where the issues are coming. So I don't know what the next financial crisis will be, because it will be named after the symptom. In fact, I would argue the euro crisis is a symptom because it's the inability of the political mechanisms in the nation state to deal with the way in which capital flows move so fast now. And there's an imbalance in there that's led to this. So given that it's going to take us a time because these things are so ingrained in our cultural roots to change them, we are in for a period of the tectonic plates rubbing up against each other. So what does that mean? Well, the first thing is it means change. You've got to embrace the fact that there's change. And if we come down a timescale and we look at the UK economy level, the UK economy has gone forward with a certain balance of different sectors and approaches, and its relationship as trading partners with the rest of the world. Well, we have to, and this is very much Alan's plan A, plan B point, we have to understand that our momentum in thinking has to change. For example, UK economy predicated on financial services. I don't know whether financial services is going to be a great, great business for the UK economy in 20 years' time. What I do know is the inconceivable possibility that it goes the way of the music business with iTunes is now conceivable. So we have to be thinking in a different way. And I do like Sir John Rose's model for the UK, which is, what have we got here? There's only so much stuff we can dig out of the ground in the UK. There's only so much area to grow stuff. So what we have is incredibly creative people. And that doesn't just mean technology, it means in advertising, it means in the people that came up with Strictly Come Dancing, all of these different things. That's what we do, and we've got to do more of it. And we've got to be prepared to back those as businesses. And where we are in businesses that do not rely on some level of creativity, and that's a very broad definition, retail can be creative. We have got to make sure that those companies start to think about growth from a creative point of view. How do we actually look at this change? Well, the most important economic indicator for me is a very strange one, which is minutes of the day. Remember what I was saying about our now 4 school years and 10? Biggest way to measure what's changing in the world is what do people spend the most limited resource they have, which is minutes of their day doing. And if you track minutes of the day, you're seeing absolutely massive changes in what's going on. And one of the things you learn from advertising is having someone's attention is something you have to do to monetize. So if these minutes of the day are moving around, then what are good businesses and bad businesses to be in are also moving around, and that comes back to plan A may need to change to plan B for companies. So the last point, really, of all of this, if you look at a company, is what this volatility is doing is it is creating the spread of returns. It's now possible to create phenomenal value very quickly in a way that would have been very difficult 50 years ago. It is also possible to have a disaster. And the wonderful piece of business insight for you is, follow the old, I think it was one of the US bank robbers that, asked why he robbed banks. He said, because that's where the money is. Well, you have to be prepared to make changes in your business that point to where the growth is. It's there. Even if the UK economy GDP number is looking a little bit ill, from a business point of view, because the volatility and the spread of return is actually increasing, as long as you're prepared to be a little bit mobile and to hedge a few bets, perhaps have some little fledgling businesses in areas that look like they might be about to take off. The biggest mistake I think I see business people make, and I see this from the startup to very large businesses, is an inability to accept that what they set out to do should be changed. What it says above the doorway may need to be changed. And what you're always doing in this time of volatility is parlaying your asset today into your asset tomorrow. But the first thing you have to accept is you may have to do that. You may have to completely change what you're thinking about. So in the sense of different, not dire, I'm actually very hopeful. And I think, it's going to be very hard to see exactly what the particular technology change is coming along, but what I know is they're going to come along and they're going to be opportunity, and they can be opportunity at a UK level and they can be opportunity at a corporate level. Let me just give you a few of those changes. Media is going through phenomenal change. So, you look at the Times and people reading it on the iPad now. That means that the content's having to change. We're having to put video on what was a newspaper. We're having to do interactive things. We're seeing things like augmented reality. That's going to revolutionize advertising. The ability to actually have objects become interactive with you. Net-a-Porter, Natalie Massenet just did a phenomenal advertising thing where she took a real shop, and she's an online business, and she actually posted over the shop window. And that shop window came alive through augmented reality. Ironically, you could do more than you could do with a real shop in that. Other things that are going to change, politics. We've all seen the Arab Spring. The ability for people to communicate is going to change how they react to companies, how they react to governments. And it's not necessarily all a good thing. This is the important thing about technology, is we can all cheer for the Arab Spring, but how would you have got the Northern Irish peace process done if everyone had a smartphone where you could hold it up to anyone in the street and it would tell you who they were? Well, it would have been almost impossible for the two sides to have met in the days when it was politically unacceptable for them to meet. So all of these things have ramifications and difficulties in it. And I'll leave you with one thought, which is I live in a Suffolk village, and a friend of mine there was an old chap who now sadly is no longer with us. He was called Arthur. And I used to like talking to Arthur because Arthur's first job was flying Lancasters over Germany in the Second World War. And we were in the pub one day, and he turned to me and he said, "Mike, you young people are so brave." And I looked at him like he was mad because, I'm not sure I would have stood the test of climbing into a Lancaster to go over Germany in the Second World War. And I said, "What do you mean, Arthur? I wouldn't have done what you've done in your life, and I'm very pleased I haven't had to do it." And he said, "You young people are so brave because you're not scared of all these things that are changing." And I think that's really the lesson from today, which is we can't be scared of change. It's going to happen. We have to grab it as the opportunity. And if we do, it's different. It's not dire.